Doc Ock coming at you live and direct from Black Facts Headquarters Central this evening. Good evening, good evening. How's everybody doing? Hope you had a good day. Doing everything in the right way. All right, well, we're going to get it on here today because, for one thing, I did not get any sleep last night. I am a sleepless wonder, but I don't want to make no blunder. All I want to do is lay down some of these tracks and share a little bit of my thunder. So I'm going to go ahead and jump on in to the water because the water is warm. And as always, I'm going to remind you, if you like what you see, give us a like. If you like what you hear, give us a thumbs up. And if you like what you see and what you hear, please go ahead and subscribe right here to the Tubular Black Facts channel. Now, yesterday we did have some technical glitches, and that caused our YouTube feed, our main feed, our main live stream, not to have any sound. So I had the images but no sound. And on Facebook, I know I've been having this issue where you've been hearing me, but you haven't been seeing the issues. I mean the images. So I had one with the sound and one with no sound, and I stayed up all night trying to combine the two of them together so that I could get that presentation to you, because it was a pretty good presentation, I thought. Personally, out of all the presentations I've done over the past year, I thought that one was a pretty good one, and I've been wanting to share information I had been gathering and ruminating over and learning about for the past, 15, 20 years or so. No, actually longer than that, going back to 1978 when I wrote that paper in college about, I don't think it was about Moses and monotheism, but I did refer to Freud's book, Moses and Monotheism, and my professor did not like it at all. He was the head of the history department. He kind of flagged me, but that's another story. For tonight, let's keep it light. We're going to be returning to our story of the week, of the month, Never Caught, the story of Ona Judge. And as we get into it, let's go ahead and do our proverb for the night. Proverb for the night is, all right, yeah, I like this one here. Yeah, this is a good one right here. Let me put my glasses on though, just so I can read it clear. Yep, enlarge it a little bit there. There we go. And this is another key Swahili proverb. So here we go. Kutoa ni moyo si utajiri. Kutoa ni moyo si utajiri. Kitoa ni moyo si utajiri. And that means donating money is only a matter of willingness, and they could not have been her friends as we understand the term. Owners and enslaved Africans did not mix socially. So they were as close as the fingers on your hand, but as separate as the fingers on your hand as well. So connected but separate. Separate but unequal, for sure. More relevant, Ona would have had little time for friendships. If anything, she'd have to watch over her peers, like Eliza, Martha's granddaughter, who was known to be a spoiled brat. So basically, Ona would have to be like an enslaved snitch. Okay? More or less. In New York, Ona and Maul would serve as housemaids and personal attendants to Martha. Ona would be her primary attendant, while Maul would be in charge of the two grandchildren that Martha and George were raising. Quote unquote raising. Sound like Ona was raising them. Martha's son Jackie had 4 children before he died, and the two youngest, 10-year-old Eleanor Park Custis, called Nellie, and 8-year-old George Washington Park Custis, called Washie, had moved in with the Washingtons. Ona already knew that during her quote-unquote free time, she'd be helping Ma with the daggone grandchildren. Likely, she never thought her life in New York would be anything but exhausting. It was a privilege of freedom to be able to think about things like talking to a friend, enjoying your leisure time, appreciating the curiosities of a new city. Yeah, that's white folks thinking. That ain't how black folks thought back in this day. The other slaves chosen to go to New York were all male. Besides Billy Lee, who was already in New York with the president, two men named Giles and Paris were going to serve as postilions to the Washington. Okay. That is, they would drive the horse-drawn carriages from atop a horse. They would drive the horse-drawn carriages from atop a horse. Well, that sounds weird. The other slaves chosen to move to New York were Christopher Shields and Ona's half-brother, Austin. They'd be waiters for the Washingtons, trained by Billy Lee himself. The fact that Christopher was Billy Lee's family member would have made him an easy choice. And like Ona, her brother Austin was a favored slave of both Martha and George. Unfortunately for Austin, he would be leaving his chosen wife, Charlotte, and his children at Mount Vernon. While the president was a fan of Austin's, he did not like Charlotte at all. She was known for her sarcastic tongue, oh yeah, and general stubbornness. George and Martha were probably grateful that she would not be around to annoy them in their new home. They did not care that Austin would be separated from his family. That didn't make no difference. The foundation of slavery was based on a slave's responsibility to his or her owner, not their own family. On May 14, 1789, Robert Louis, George, and Martha's 20-year-old nephew arrived at Mount Vernon to escort his aunt and her slaves to New York. It had not even occurred to him that Martha wouldn't be ready. But she wasn't. Instead of an organized group of people and belongings, he found a frenzied and hectic state. Everything appeared to be in total confusion. He wrote in his diary, when the departure finally took place on May 16, Robert described the emotional moment for the slaves and Martha. After an early dinner and making all necessary arrangements, in which we were greatly retarded, it brought us to 3 o'clock in the afternoon. When we left Mount Vernon, the servants of the house and a number of the field Negroes made their appearance to take leave of their mistress. Numbers of these poor wretches seemed greatly agitated, much affected, my aunt equally so, says Robert. Betty, Ona's mother, must have been one of those agitated, affected slaves. Like Ona, she could not complain, but like mothers throughout time, it would have been heartbreaking to watch her children prepare to leave their home. Betty had never had complete control over the lives of her children. No enslaved mother did, but to watch Ona and Austin depart with Martha for a new and strange part of the country must have been unbearable. Another cruel and very public slap in the face. Would Ona and Austin ever come back? Would she ever see her children again? Betty had no power. She would have to wait for those answers. On her journey north, Ona was also probably full of questions. When she finally pushed back, how different would the work be? Black folk, Washington's valet, had already told him that in the north there were more white people living side by side, and it was all supposed to be very crowded. What about looking at expanses of fields? What about the joy? Ona may have felt when she was running errands and paused for just a second to look at a flower or a particularly beautiful tree? What about all the people whom she knew and who knew her? Ain't none of that matter. The priority was always Martha. This was proven during every minute of their journey. Martha and her grandchildren sat in the top of the line British made carriage, painted with scenes of the seasons on all the doors. They sat on comfortable green silk cushions. There was a roof. They had a roof over their head in the carriage, and it had wheels that were from Germany, which eased the travel on the unpaved roads between Virginia and Maryland. Because, you know, they hadn't invented asphalt yet, so these roads weren't nothing but some dirt roads, okay? Sometimes they had ruts in them. You know, you had to be careful not to get your wheel caught in a wagon wheel rut. You know how to say don't get in a rut? They meant that literally. Meanwhile, the male slaves and Robert Louis himself all rode on horseback. Ona and Maul were in a small, quote-unquote, chariot. However, the word chariot makes it sound better than it really was. They had to stand. There was no roof. It would bump and jostle at every stone and dip in the ground. The baggage was piled high on a wagon. The first hurdle for the procession was crossing the Potomac by barge ferry to Georgetown, Maryland. This meant that the carriages and chariot would be loaded onto a long, rectangular, flat-bottomed barge and rowed across the river to the other side. The horses that had taken them this far would be released because George Washington had arranged for fresh horses to be waiting for them on the other side. Got to have some fresh horses, fresh mounts. Martha and her grandchildren went first. The slaves followed on another barge, but the new horses didn't like the harness and recoiled. I can hear them now, leaping back and trying to run away. By this point, Martha had taken her grandchildren to a nearby tavern to wait. Ona may have gone with her, but she may have stayed, and she may have watched as the coachmen proceeded to lash the horses with their whips so that they would behave. Chicka, chicka. Eventually, the horses were strapped into their halters, and the procession began anew. Before arriving in Baltimore, the group stopped again, this time at a place called Spurrier's Tavern. Martha was led inside, followed by Ona, who wheeled Martha's trunk. She had a trunk with wheels on it. Traveling, even with the carriage, with green silk cushions was dusty work. Every speck of Martha's clothes would have been covered in dirt from the roads. Naturally, every speck of Ona's, Maul's, Austin's, and Christopher Shields' clothes were covered in dust too. But cleaning up their clothes was not a priority. Cleaning Martha's clothes, now that's a priority. As always, that's what was most important. Inside the tavern, Ona would have opened the trunk and shaken out one of Martha's riding dresses. She would have helped Martha out of her first dress, and she would have had to shake that out too and repack it in the trunk. She would have removed Martha's bonnet and combed out her hair. Oh yeah, get to comb that long, wavy hair. Within hours, they were on their way again. Baltimore was the first time on this trip when it became incredibly clear. That Martha was now a celebrity. It must have been fascinating for Ona to watch all the attention poured onto her owner by so many strangers. A whole host of people, men and women, had met her outside Baltimore to escort her into the city. She was staying at the home of James and Margaret McHenry. James had been a Revolutionary War aide to both George and Lafayette. That night, there was a fireworks presentation, and later on at 2 in the morning, a serenade. Oh, lovely, lovely. Ona and Maul probably stayed with the McHenrys slaves in their slave quarters. So right next to the pigs and the cows and the horses, I'm quite sure they were out there near some stables. So it must have smelled really nice. Not. They may have been able to watch the fireworks too, although only as a side benefit when they were minding the grand chilling. The group left at 5 the next morning so that they could avoid any parade that might be intended. This was not because Martha did not like the attention. It was because she could not wait to get to Philly and to the home of her friends, Robert and Mary Morris. Now, Robert Morris, he's an important character too, although you may not know it, because he actually wrote what was it? Something that Ben Franklin was known to have worked on. Ooh, now I can't. No, I can't think of it. Oh, he designed, I believe he was the one that designed the seal of the Great Seal of the United States, was Robert Morris. If I'm not mistaken, we're talking, that's the very same Robert Morris. The passengers were going to spend almost 5 days in Philly before heading to their final destination, New York City, on Monday, May 25th. Given her low expectations about black folks, Martha would have been surprised to know how much the very word Philadelphia excited her fellow travelers. But Philadelphia had long been in the minds of Ona and all the slaves. The stories they had heard from Billy Lee had engaged their fantasies ever since they left Mount Vernon, especially the fact that unlike most slaves, he had come so close to being part of his own romantic fairy tale with a woman named Margaret. Oh yeah. Ona had never met Margaret, but her story loomed large in Ona's mind. Billy Lee had told the other slaves that long ago, when he had traveled with George to Philadelphia for the Continental Congress, he had discovered that many black men and women lived freely and were paid for their work. Imagine that. Getting paid for your work. This too added to the fairy tale aspect of the story. One of these free black women was named Margaret. Margaret Thomas, to be exact. William had fallen in love quickly, and so apparently had Margaret, even though a marriage between them would have been illegal. George had supposedly given permission for Margaret to move to Mount Vernon to be with Billy Lee. Sadly, Billy Lee had returned alone. A side note to this story is that Billy Lee had gone to Philly for the first time. Is that before he'd been gone to Philly for the first time, he'd been called Billy by everyone, including George Washington himself. In Philadelphia, something happened that made him decide to use his whole name. He proceeded to tell everyone, including George, to refer to him as William instead of Billy Lee. We cannot know for sure, but it is likely that living among free blacks had influenced this decision, along with his meeting Margaret. Margaret never lived at Mount Vernon. No one knows whether she ever even tried to make the trip or whether she decided ultimately that her freedom was more important to her than true love. Oh yeah, and stayed in Philly. It would have been incredibly dangerous for her, a free woman, to move to a state where slavery was in force. She would have also known that she would be different from the enslaved. For example, she may have known how to read and write, which was not true for most slaves. Young Christopher Shields on horseback in front of Ona did, and this made him a rarity. This, among other reasons, may have been why she did not end up at Mount Vernon. William Lee was never given a letter or even told what happened to this woman who had affected him so deeply. It was a heartbreak for William that opened the door to a string of sad events. He was injured in 1785, shattered his knee, and again in 1788, when on a cold and snowy day, he slipped and shattered his other knee. Y'all talking about knee replacements. George Washington agreed to bring William to New York as a member of his team of slaves, even though William's injuries prevented him from arriving in New York until June 22nd, 1789, more than 2 months after George. Ona, too, had a while to go before she reached New York. Her next stop was the place that would prove to be her transformative home, Philly, the city of brotherly love. At least that's what they call it. I don't know if it was they were dealing with some sisterly love there too, but we'll have to find that out in our next installment of Never Caught, the story of Ona Judge, a enslaved African who escaped from Martha and George Washington. This is the side of the story that you never hear, because we all know that until the lions write the story, the hunter will always be the glorious one, not the lion. But in this case, somebody wrote on the story for her. She didn't write it for herself. That's why it's in the third person, as opposed to telling about things that the author of the story actually did. So I hope y'all are enjoying the story. I hope you're sharing it with the children. Right about now, it's time for all those little children that might be out there. I don't know if there's any out there or not, but even some of you old children, it's time to lay your little heads on your little pillows, on your little beds, and close those eyes. What you need to do once you close those eyes is just wait for that good old sun to rise, because you know it's going to come up in the east and slay every beast. Early in the morning, you'll feel those sunbeams beaming down on your eyes, and that's when you know it's time to rise and shine, O children of mine. And in the meantime, don't forget to give us a like, a thumbs up, and subscribe to the Tubular Black Facts channel. This is Doc Ock signing out. You know, tomorrow we're having another glorious day, and we will be continuing on to talk about black gods and saints in Europe. Yeah, don't miss out, because we haven't come to the end of this story yet. We got 2 more editions to do tomorrow and the next day. Peace out without a doubt. Let me give a wave to a few people I see out here. I see Imani Zaire. I see Mr. Eric Beasley. Good to see you, Beasley, and Sydney. Been a regular. Thank y'all for your support. Peace out, y'all.